recruit mocked her tattoo at camp. The base commander saluted her and apologized publicly. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in September of 2003. Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Private First Class Delia Crane was 22 years old, standing in line at the mail station outside the company orderly room, still wearing her physical training uniform from the 5 a.m. run, sweat drying on her collar. Ground fog sitting low over the parade field. The letter was from the Department of the Army. She read it once standing there in line, folded it in half, and put it in her cargo pocket without saying anything to anyone. The tattoo on her left forearm was 11 years old at that point. She'd had it done in October of 1992, when she was 11, by a man in Biloxi, Mississippi, who her father had arranged it with, not a tattoo parlor. A man who came to the house on a Saturday afternoon with a small case and a cloth he laid on the kitchen table. The image was modest, 3 inches across. An eagle perched on a branch, wings folded, with a date beneath it in plain block numbers. August 14th, 1991, her father's day of death. She'd asked for it at age 9. He tried to talk her out of it. She asked again at 10. He arranged it when she turned 11. He was not alive to see it done. By the time she reported to Fort Leonard Wood in June of 2003, the tattoo was faded and slightly blurred at the edges from 11 years on growing skin. The eagle was still recognizable. The date was still legible. She had never once considered removing it. The trouble started in the second week of basic training. A recruit named Garrett Howell from Odessa, Texas, noticed it during a gear inspection on a Thursday afternoon in mid-July. The inspection was inside the barracks bay. The drill sergeant was moving down the bunks checking equipment layouts. Howell was 2 bunks over from Crane. He was 20 years old, 6'1", and had been testing the edges of things since day 1 of reception processing. He asked her what the tattoo was. She told him it was a date. He asked whose. She told him it was her father's. He told her that her daddy must have been real proud, getting memorialized on his little girl's arm. He said it at a volume that 4 other recruits heard clearly. The drill sergeant didn't hear it, or chose not to respond. Delia Crane looked at Howell for 3 seconds, went back to her gear. That was the first incident. There were 3 more over the following 11 days. The second happened during a land navigation exercise on a Wednesday in late July. The platoon was broken into 4-person groups for an overnight course in the training area east of Range 4, 2 miles from the main cantonment. Howell wasn't in her group. But at the water point before the exercise, both platoons mixing together to fill canteens, he made a comment within range of a staff sergeant from 2nd Platoon. The staff sergeant turned toward the sound, saw 4 or 5 recruits at the water point, couldn't isolate the source, moved on. The third incident was at the company mess hall on a Saturday morning. Howell sat 3 seats down on the bench and spoke to the recruit beside him while directing his gaze toward Crane. Indirect, nothing formally actionable. The fourth was on a Thursday night in the 3rd week of training. The platoon was cleaning weapons in the bay, seated in 2 rows on footlockers with cleaning kits open on the floor. It had been a long day. 14 miles of road march with full kit in Missouri summer, 91 degrees at the hottest point in the afternoon. 1 recruit had gone down with heat exhaustion near mile 9 and been pulled out by medics. Everyone was tired. Howell had learned more of the story by then. Not just that her father had been a Marine, what the date on her forearm actually represented. He told the recruit beside him loud enough that 3 people heard it. Said the tattoo didn't seem to have done much good. Said maybe she should get a new one. Delia Crane set her M16 components down on the cleaning cloth with care. She did not respond. She finished cleaning the weapon, reassembled it in 3 minutes and 40 seconds, put it on her bunk and sat with her hands on her knees for a moment. Then, she went to sleep. Staff Sergeant Nora Kellums was the senior NCO attached to 2nd Platoon for administrative support. She was 31 years old, had served 8 years in the Army by that point, and had spent the previous 2 years at Fort Leonard Wood after a tour in Germany and a deployment to Bosnia in 1997 with the 1st Armored Division. She'd seen a range of recruits in her time. Most of them fell into predictable categories inside the first week. Kellums had started watching Crane at the beginning of week 3. Not because of the incidents, she hadn't witnessed any of them directly. Because of how Crane moved through the training day. There was a quality to her that Kellums recognized and couldn't immediately name. Something methodical. Something that didn't accelerate when things went well or slowed down when they went badly. Kellums ran the 4th incident down on a Friday morning. One of the recruits who had heard it told her when she asked. He didn't want to say it, said it anyway. She thanked him and sent him back to his detail. She went to her desk in the ENCO office in the back of the orderly room and spent 20 minutes thinking about what she knew and what she didn't. She knew the name on the tattoo belonged to Crane's father. She knew Howell had made 4 comments spread across 11 days. She knew Crane had not reported any of them and had not retaliated. She knew Crane's scores that week were the highest in the platoon. 43 on a 50-point land navigation practical. 91% on the first aid written assessment. 38 out of 40 on the M16 qualification range, which put her 2nd in the company. She knew those numbers because she'd looked them up. What she didn't know was what the date on the tattoo actually meant. She pulled the personnel file on PFC Delia M. Crane at 0715 that Friday morning, not the training record, the full 201 file, which had come up with the soldier's intake packet when she cleared reception. The file contained the standard enlistment documentation, the physical exam results, the background check clearance. It also contained a letter. Letters from official Army correspondents were retained in a soldier's 201 file when the subject matter was relevant to service. The letter was dated September 2, 2003. It was printed on Department of the Army letterhead and signed by a Deputy Assistant Secretary. It was addressed to PFC Delia M. Crane, a company, 3rd Battalion, 10th Infantry. The letter informed her that a posthumous award recommendation for her father, Gunnery Sergeant Raymond Earl Crane, United States Marine Corps, had been formally approved. The award was the Navy Cross. The recommendation had been submitted in August of 1992 and had moved through the review process for 11 years. The letter noted that a formal presentation to the next of kin could be arranged through the soldier's installation chain of command at a time of the family's choosing. Kellums read it twice. Sat for a moment. Raymond Earl Crane had died on August 14, 1991. The letter did not describe the circumstances. It didn't need to. The date was enough. The date was on her forearm. Delia Crane had been 11 years old in 1992 when she asked to have a dead man's date of death put on her arm, and no one in this training cycle had known what they were talking about when they talked about it. Kellums closed the file. She went to Captain Russell Doyle's office at 0630. He was at his desk. She closed the door. She described what she knew, the 4 incidents, the timeline, the file, the letter. She described it without editorializing. Doyle was 34 years old, had commanded a company for 8 months, and had the particular stillness of a man who had learned to listen before deciding. He listened to Kellums for 6 minutes. Asked her one question when she finished. She answered it. He picked up the phone and called the battalion executive officer. The call moved. Battalion XO to the brigade adjutant to the post adjutant general's office. By mid-morning, the file had been pulled at 3 different levels. By 10:45, a summary had reached the office of Major General Thomas Albright, Commanding General of the United States Army Maneuver Support Center of Excellence and Fort Leonard Wood. Albright was 61 years old. He'd commissioned in 1966, served 37 years, and was 4 months from his retirement date. He had been a young captain in 1991, stationed at Fort Ord in California when the Gulf War ended. He had not deployed to Kuwait. Several men he'd served with had. He read the summary his aide set in front of him, read it a second time, asked for Raymond Crane's complete service record from the Marine Corps Personnel Command Liaison. The record arrived by secure fax at 13:20 on that Friday afternoon. He read it for 43 minutes without interruption. Raymond Crane had enlisted in the Marine Corps in 1969 at age 19. He had served 22 years and reached the rank of gunnery sergeant. He had deployed twice before the Gulf War, once to Beirut in 1983 with 1st Battalion 8th Marines and once to Panama in 1989. The Gulf War deployment was with 3rd Battalion 9th Marines, 1st Marine Division. The action for which the Navy Cross had been submitted occurred on August 12th and 13th, 1991, during vehicle recovery operations north of Kuwait City following the ceasefire. A convoy had come under sporadic small arms fire from fighters who had not received or acknowledged the ceasefire order. A 7-ton truck had been disabled by fire to its engine compartment. 2 Marines in the truck were wounded and unable to exit the vehicle. Crane had left covered position under fire and pulled both Marines clear. The following morning, during a second recovery operation at a different disabled vehicle position, the vehicle had caught fire. Crane extracted a 3rd Marine from the burning cab. He sustained wounds to his right leg and left shoulder during these actions. He was evacuated to a field hospital. He died of complications from his wounds on August 14, 1991. He was 41 years old. His daughter was 10. The Navy Cross recommendation had been submitted by his battalion commander in August of 1992. The recommendation had moved through the Marine Corps award system, then the Navy Awards Board, at a pace Albright recognized as typical of posthumous awards processed after conflicts officially ended. 11 years was not unusual. It was also not nothing. Albright put the record on his desk and looked at the wall for a moment. Then, he called his chief of staff. The logistics of what happened next took the rest of Friday afternoon and the weekend. The Marine Corps liaison officer at Fort Leonard Wood was contacted. The public affairs officer was briefed. The battalion commander of 310 Infantry was briefed. Captain Doyle was informed that Monday morning's company formation would include a general officer visit. He was told what would happen. He did not inform his drill sergeants of the specifics. He told them there would be a go visit. That was enough. Garrett Howell was quietly repositioned to a different squad within the platoon on Saturday morning. The drill sergeant was told it was an administrative adjustment for unit balance. No reason was given to Howell. He noticed the move and said nothing to anyone. Delia Crane noticed the repositioning by noon on Saturday. She did not comment on it. The following Monday, the platoon had its routine No. 800 company formation. 47 soldiers in 4 ranks on the company street. Gray morning, 68 degrees, light wind from the northwest. Captain Doyle was present. Drill Sergeants Patterson and Whitmore were present. The morning began as a standard administrative formation, and no one in the ranks had any indication it would be otherwise. Major General Albright arrived at Nero 815. His vehicle came into the company area, Without announcement, he stepped out with his aide. He was in his Class A green uniform. 4 stars on each epaulette. That combination of rank and uniform at a basic training company formation was not a thing that happened in the normal course. The formation didn't know the protocol. Drill Sergeant Patterson called them to attention. Albright walked to the front of the formation. He spoke to Captain Doyle in a low voice for 15 seconds. Doyle called for PFC Crane. She stepped out of the 3rd rank, moved to the front, and stood at attention 6 feet from the commanding general. She was in her service uniform, left forearm visible at her side. Albright faced the formation. He said that he had come to address something that had occurred in this company area over the preceding weeks, and that he wanted to do so in front of the formation, because he believed the formation deserved to hear it. He described, briefly, what was on PFC Crane's left forearm. He said it was a date. He said the date was August 14th, 1991. He said that on that date a United States Marine named Raymond Earl Crane died of wounds he had sustained while extracting 3 fellow Marines from disabled and burning vehicles under hostile fire, 2 days after a ceasefire had been declared. He said that Raymond Crane's daughter had been 10 years old when he died, and that she had had that date placed on her forearm at age 11, and that she had carried it into the United States Army and into this company area, and that he believed it was the most appropriate thing he had seen on a soldier's person in 37 years of service. He said that the Navy Cross for those actions had been approved in August of 2003. Then, Major General Thomas Albright rendered a full formal salute to Private First Class Delia M. Crane. She returned it. He held his for 2 full seconds after hers came down, dropped it, let a moment pass, looked at the formation. He said he understood that certain comments had been made in this unit about that tattoo and what it represented. He said he was not going to address the individual responsible by name in this formation. He said he was going to say one thing, and he said it. He said that when you see something on another soldier that you don't understand, you would be well served to find out what it means before you speak. He said that in 37 years he had never once met a veteran's child who wore their grief lightly. He got back in his vehicle. He was gone by 0829. The formation held in position for 9 seconds after his vehicle turned out of the company area. Drill Sergeant Patterson gave a sharp command and put them back to work. Doyle spoke privately with Crane that afternoon for 6 minutes in his office. He asked if she had questions about what had occurred. She said she did not. He told her the family presentation of the Navy Cross could be arranged through battalion channels at any time she and her family were available. He asked if her family had a preference for ceremony format. She said her mother was in Biloxi, Mississippi, and would probably prefer something small. He said he would coordinate it. The presentation ceremony was held on a Saturday morning in mid-October of 2003, 6 weeks after the formation. Fort Leonard Wood's Memorial Chapel, which seated 220, and was used that morning for 12 people. Delia Crane had completed basic training by then, and was in advanced individual training with a different battalion, attending the 92A logistics course. She was granted a 4-hour pass. Her mother, Carol Crane, drove up from Biloxi, 8 hours each way. Carol was 63 years old, had worked 30 years as a school secretary at Biloxi Middle School, and had raised Delia alone from age 10. Carol's younger brother, Marcus, drove down from Springfield with his wife. 3 of Raymond Crane's fellow Marines from 3-9 had been contacted through the Marine Corps Association. 2 came. They wore their dress blues. 1 drove from Memphis. 1 flew in from San Diego. A Marine Corps representative from the St. Louis Recruiting District read the citation. It took 4 minutes and 20 seconds. The citation documented the events of August 12 and 13, 1991, with the specificity that military citations require. The name of the convoy route, the grid coordinates of the first vehicle recovery, the time of the second action, 0640 in the morning of the 13th. The number of rounds of hostile fire documented by witness statements. The names of the 3 Marines Crane extracted. All 3 were still living at the time of the citation approval. 1 had been contacted and submitted a statement. The citation closed with the language all Navy Cross citations close with. Then the medal was presented. Carol Crane accepted it with both hands. She held it for a moment, then put it in her lap. She did not cry. She had waited 11 years for this. She was well past the crying. She sat in the chapel pew in a gray dress and low shoes she had bought specifically for the occasion, and she held the medal in her lap, and she was quiet. Delia Crane stood beside her mother in her dress green uniform, left forearm at her side when she was at ease. The tattoo visible below the cuff. The eagle. The date. She looked at the medal once when her mother received it. Then she looked at the stained glass window on the west wall of the chapel, a mountain range and a sky and light coming through the blue portions. She stood there in that light for the remainder of the ceremony. She completed 8 in December of 2003. Orders to the 61st Ordnance Brigade at Fort Hood, Texas. She arrived in January of 2004 and spent 2 years there doing supply and logistics work. She was promoted to specialist in June of 2004. In late 2005, she transferred to the 21st Theater Sustainment Command in Kaiserslautern, Germany. In March of 2006, she deployed to Iraq with a forward support company attached to the 1st Armored Division's 2nd Brigade. She served 9 months at a forward operating base in Taji, north of Baghdad, managing parts requisitions and supply chain documentation for vehicle maintenance operations. She returned to Kaiserslautern in December of 2006. She was promoted to sergeant in 2007. She deployed once more, in 2009, to Afghanistan. Bagram Airfield. 8 months. She was a staff sergeant by then and ran a 4-person supply team that tracked equipment accountability for 3 forward elements. She was recommended for the Army Commendation Medal for her work during a particularly difficult accountability audit following a vehicle loss incident in February of 2010. The recommendation was approved. She served her final 18 months at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and was honorably discharged in August of 2012 at the rank of Staff Sergeant. She had served 9 years and 2 months. She returned to Mississippi, took a position with the Mississippi Veterans Service Organization in Gulfport, working as a benefits coordinator helping veterans navigate claims through the VA system. She has been there 12 years. Nori Kellums made Sergeant First Class in 2005. She served 20 years total, finished at Fort Campbell, and retired in 2012 with a Meritorious Service Medal and a reputation as someone who noticed things. She never spoke to Delia Crane again after the A Company formation. She didn't need to. She'd done the one thing that was hers to do. Garrett Howell completed basic training in the same cycle. He received orders to an infantry unit at Fort Bragg, served his 3-year enlistment, and was honorably discharged in the spring of 2006. He is not part of what followed. The Navy Cross is in a shadow box on the east wall of Carol Crane's living room in Biloxi. Next to it is Raymond Crane's official service portrait, taken in 1988 at Camp Lejeune. He is 38 in the portrait. Dress blues. 4 rows of ribbons. He looks like a man who is used to being photographed and isn't particularly interested in it. The shadow box has been on that wall for 21 years. Delia Crane visits on the first weekend of most months. She and her mother have coffee on the back porch in the morning, facing the yard and the neighbor's fence, and the oak tree that Raymond Crane planted the spring before he deployed in 1990. It is 35 feet tall now. The porch faces away from the east wall. She doesn't look at the shadow box particularly when she visits. It's there when she comes in through the front door. It's there when she leaves. She knows it's there. The tattoo is 33 years old. The lines of the eagle have softened over time. The date beneath it has held. August 14, 1991. She doesn't explain it unless asked. When someone asks, she tells them all of it. When they don't ask, she doesn't. That's been the arrangement from the beginning. Still is.